What's going on? Eddie here with Guitar Mastery Method. We help thousands of guitar players all around the world, just like you, take your guitar playing to the next level. And today we're going to be taking a look at the blues scale and breaking it down. So if you don't know what the blues scale is, it's based on the G pentatonic pattern. And in this case, I've been playing it in the key of A. And if we take the G pentatonic pattern, which goes like this, if we take that, all we have to do is add one note to the scale, and it automatically becomes the blues scale. And that one note is what's called the blue note, or the flat 5. If you don't know what flat 5 means, don't even worry about it. It's just called the blue note because it adds to the blues scale sound. Okay, so now I'll show you the blues scale. We're going to start on the 5th fret on the low E string, right? Then the 8th fret with our pinky, then 5th fret on the A string. Then we're going to play the 6th fret with our 2nd finger here on the A string. Then the 7th fret with our 3rd finger on the A string. All right, so far it's just like the pentatonic scale, right? But we added that note, right? And then we have 5th fret on the D string, 7th fret on the D string, and then 5 and 7 again on the G string. But then with our pinky, we're going to add the 8th fret here. And then 5, 8 on B, and then 5, 8 on high E, okay? So it's exactly like the A minor pentatonic scale. We just added one note, but it appears in an octave, right? It's the same exact note, but just in, 2 different octaves in the scale, because this scale technically covers multiple octaves, right? So just like that. And that's the blues scale. So if we're playing the G pentatonic pattern, right? Now remember, it's the G pentatonic pattern, but we're in the key, the scale is being played in the key of A here. Okay, so when we're playing the pentatonic pattern, the one note we're going to add, the blue note, it starts right here. So when we play through it, so the blue note, which was found twice in the scale, same note, just a different octave, right? Added a completely different dimension to the scale. Now, this sounds a little silly, but this will be a way that you'll never forget it. I like to think of the blue note as, I like to call it the Cruella de Vil note, because it just takes what you're playing and adds this like really kind of swingy, just kind of out of tune, but just kind of almost Stray Cats kind of feel. Cruella de Vil, all right? So that, if you think about it, that actual song, that note was a flat 5, a blue note. All right? And in the beginning of the video, all I was doing was playing through the scale, but I was literally playing through the scale. I was just kind of honestly improvising. What I did was I knew that I had the notes in the scale to mess around with. I just kind of did little things like change up the timings and picked notes that I wanted to play, and did little things like slides and little bends and stuff, but it was all notes inside of the scale. So the point of this lesson is I want you to take this scale, all right, the blues scale. I'm going to show you how to make it musical so that every time you play it, you're not just playing through the scale and exercising, you're actually playing music. Doesn't even matter if you've never played a blues scale lick in your life, okay? This video is meant to get you comfortable with using notes in the scales as tools, right? To get the sounds that you want. But in order to know what those sounds are, we have to really get familiar with them, okay? So, as I said, the blue note, right, is the Cruella de Vil note, right? So, it adds a certain attitude, and it sounds great even when you're playing by yourself with no backing track. That's actually how I prefer you exercise this, is when you're by yourself with no accompaniment. Just like force yourself to find creative ways to navigate through the scale. Now you can go through the scale in order, okay, but change up the timing a little bit. Like in the beginning, I kind of just played like a little A, just, right? I just played, A right here, and then So it's like a fragment of like an A minor chord, right? For example. So I played that just to kind of set the stage. Then I just started playing notes. I like to hang on the blue note, right? Because it's a note that's almost out of tune, so it inherently it forces you to want to take it somewhere else to resolve it, right? Right? It's like you can just like let that be sort of a cliffhanger, right? You're playing that note, then you got to play more notes in the scale to resolve it, right? So in the blues scale, just like the pentatonic scale, there are 3 root notes, right? So we're in the key of A, right? The root notes are 5th fret on the low E string, 7th fret on the D string, and 5th fret on the high E string. So when you're playing through the scale, okay, if you want to resolve it, just land on any of those 3 notes and it'll work. So for example, right? So you can kind of go through any order of the notes in the scale, but these 3 notes, right, the root notes, think of those as like home base, right? You want to always come back to those notes, so that way you resolve. And again, if you're playing by yourself with no backing or anything like that, that's going to be the best way to indicate that you have just resolved what you're playing. All right, so now that we know how to play the blues scale, let's talk about how to use the blues scale. And I'm talking about using the scale without a backing track, without any kind of accompaniment, just you and your guitar playing through this blues scale, but playing it in a way that's musical and not just like you're exercising, just playing the scale up and down. Because let's be honest, we see that all day long, where you're just playing through a scale. Even in our own playing, we're playing through a scale and it's like, all right, well, I'm not really inspired by what I'm playing. What's the deal? What the deal is that even though you know what notes to play, it's not about what notes you play, it's how you play them. So like in the beginning of the video, I was literally only playing notes found within the blues scale. That's it. All right? Only notes in the blues scale. But what I did was I set the stage where I started off with like a feel. So I played kind of like a little A, chord just to start it off, right? This is a very B.B. King thing, by the way, where he would just like play a chord, then he'd play like a tasty lick, right? So I would start with that chord, which is it's just an A minor chord, right? But just a fragment of it, right? I just had my thumb playing the 5th fret on the low E string, and then my first finger barring the 5th fret on the B and high E strings, right? So I started with that, and then I just started playing notes in the scale. All right, like that right there. I mean, I'm just improvising, right? But I know what notes I'm supposed to be playing. I know where the notes in the scale are, just like you do too now, right? Just kind of adding a little bit of flavor to how they're played, right? Again, it's not what notes you play, it's how you play them. Although in this case, it's both, right? Because the notes we're playing are notes inside of the blues scale, right? So we're playing those notes, but we don't want to just play them like. That's not music. That's just exercising a scale. So when we start something off like this, the cool thing about that blue note, that Cruella de Vil note is it just like, it just adds, like when you land on it, you can hang on it for a little bit, but not too long, because you can't really resolve it, because it'll sound like this. It'll create what's called a tritone, and that's the devil's music. Seriously, look it up. In medieval times, they thought that was the devil's note. It's kind of interesting. But anyway, either way, it creates too much tension, right? We don't want to end on that. But when you hang on that note, you can hang on it a little bit and do that cliffhanger thing and then just bring it on home, right? And remember, we have 3 notes in the scale that are the home base, right? The octaves, or the root notes, right? In 3 different octaves. So again, think of those as the places you want to land when you're playing through this scale. So if you're just sitting there, it's just you and your guitar, right? Right? Just playing notes in there and then making sure to land on one of those 3 home base notes, right? The root notes. And then literally you can play through any of the notes of the scale. You can change up the order if you want, you know. Whoop. You know, just kind of, I'm just going through it sort of randomly. That sounded kind of cool. It's like, you know, you can really play any notes you want in the scale, but you want to play them sort of with purpose, right? So for me, it's all about timing. So I want you to think about that. When you're playing through these notes, think about your timing. I'm kind of free flowing, so I'm not really playing to a beat, but in a way, it's like I'm going through the scale with purpose. It doesn't sound like exercising, right? It doesn't sound like I'm playing a scale. It actually sounds kind of musical. So that's exactly what I want you to approach when you're playing the scale. Now that you know that blue note, that Cruella de Vil note, right? It gives you that Cruella de Vil vibe. It just adds a whole new element to playing through the scale and makes it that much more musical. So what I want you to do is when you're playing through the scale by yourself, kind of milk those blue notes a little bit. Right? When you're playing through. You know, it kind of like when I play it, it inspires me to take it in like a fun direction that obviously brings it back home, right? So if I'm hanging on that blue note, you know, it's free flowing, right? But I'm knowing to land on those root notes, right? And I'm just having fun with that blue note, just kind of letting it create some tension and then just resolving it. It's almost like that tension never happened. The whole point of like creating music from a scale, it all really comes down to listening to the notes in the scale. You have to be familiar with what each note of the scale, what kind of sound it gives you, right? Get really, really, really comfortable with how the notes sound. So when you're playing through them, even if you're playing through them super slowly, every single note is a tool, right? It offers something. So you can think about that when you're playing through. You know, when we're playing just the regular minor pentatonic scale, it doesn't really have very many colorful notes in there, right? It's really that blue note that's so colorful, it kind of like forces, it like pops so much, so it kind of forces you to, again, like I said, resolve it or like come up with creative ways to go around it, you know? Create that Cruella de Vil vibe. Right? So it's really a lot of fun when you're playing through a scale and it has a note like that can just kind of kickstart your listening process, right? Because that's just a note you can't ignore, right? That blue note, you know, you can't ignore that note. It's easy to ignore the notes in the regular minor pentatonic scale, right? But that blue note really, really forces your ear and your hands to just kind of come up with really cool creative ways. So what I want you to do is to practice this scale by yourself. Like I said, before you start playing it, you know, with your band or with to a backing track, before you do any of that, just get intimate with it. Just you and your guitar. Play through that scale, hang on those blue notes, and just kind of let the scale almost play itself without it being like you're just playing the scale up and down. You see what I mean? Because when you're comfortable with the blues scale and all the notes contained within it and really know how to play musical lines and stuff like that, just by using the scale by itself, imagine when you start playing with a band or do a backing track and you start applying it and you let the accompaniment really, you know, bring more ideas out from you. You know, it's like you really want to start off really with any scale. You want to do this. But with the blues scale, like I said, it's great because that blue note is very colorful. So start with that. Get comfortable with playing it on your own and then start playing it to a backing track or with other accompaniment. And then you'd be surprised how when you use those ideas that sound good on your own, not only do they sound good on their own, but they sound so much better when you have something backing you. Then it'll also inspire you to come up with even more creative ideas, and like the cycle continues. It's great. This is how you can create music out of scales. And now that you're equipped with this knowledge of taking a scale and turning it into music, there's something I want you to have. A free guitar cheat sheet that'll teach you how to instantly solo in any key. It's going to massively improve your lead guitar playing, and it'll give you the ability to jam over any song, any backing track, any musician, and play the right notes every single time. What we learned today is the perfect precursor to this. So be sure to click right here and claim that lesson. Next up, be sure to smack the subscribe button and hit the bell notification icon so you can stay up to date on all the new lessons we got coming at you. That about does it for this video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. I'm Eddie with Guitar Mastery Method, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.